Hi everyone, I'm John Bergin and I'm the Walkley Foundation's Project Manager for the Google News Initiative Training Network. And I'm delighted to bring you to today a very special webinar with Miguel de Souza, the Google News Lab Teaching Fellow. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all gathered today. And for me, that's the Gadigal and Wongal people of the Eora Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, the Walkley Foundation has been at the heart of Australian journalism since the very first Walkley Award was handed out in 1956. And together, working with our peers in the media industry, we celebrate great journalism and we elevate the craft of journalism through professional development. Last year, the Walkley Foundation and the Google News Initiative provided free and in-person training to thousands of journalists, editors, and students. And while COVID-19 has certainly made things a little bit more complicated this year, our commitment to you hasn't wavered at all. We've been working around the clock to bring you free training workshops online, and we're sharing free tools and resources to support the vital work journalists do to keep their communities informed. If you have a question about anything covered in this workshop today, just type it into the chat box or tweet, and we'll do our best to provide an answer. Both the Walkley Foundation and the Google News Initiative will be in the chat box, meeting your needs. You can also contact us via email. Now, the address is newslabsupport@google.com. And you can access step-by-step tutorials at any time and at no cost just by going to g.co/news training. And so without any further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Miguel de Souza.
Really great to be here. Whoops, I'll start that one again. Thank you very much, John. It is fantastic to be here. And let me get started by also acknowledging the traditional custodians of these lands on which we meet, and to recognise their continuing connection to land, waters, and community. I pay my respects to them and their cultures and to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, a little bit about me. I'm a journalist and a teacher trainer. I've worked on the internet putting out news since 1994 for companies like AAP, news.com.au, 7 News, and SBS. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming along. A few details about me on the screen there for you, and as well, a little later on, I might flash that News Lab support email up as well. So thank you very much for joining me. I'm hoping that by the end of today's session, you'll be able to search the internet and be much more confident in what you're looking for. Today, we're going to start by looking at Google's advanced search and employing Google search operators to speed up your searches and make finding information on the web a little bit easier in a more targeted manner. We'll also have a look at Google's knowledge panels, and we'll start with some simple operators after that, before we then move on to much more complicated search strings, which are a lot like recipes for search engines. And finally, we're going to put all of these together to automate your news gathering. I'm pretty confident that if you play along with me today, by the end of today's session, you'll be able to write a search string to retrieve exactly what you want from the search. And just a reminder that Google has developed a huge range of tools that you can act to help your work and help develop your skills. You can email us at that email address just below. And remember, as John said, please sing out and use the chat window to raise any questions. By the way, if you have a second screen, that is going to be really handy, because we will do some exercises and you're most welcome to join in. Now, one more important address I should tell you is this one, which is the address for Google's news training website. To stay up to date with the latest tools and workflows for finding and telling news stories on Google's news training website, just go to that address below, g.co/news training. This site will allow you, at your own pace, to learn about all the elements of digital journalism, from finding information and stories, verifying, and also visualizing stories on the web. You'll find really easy to follow courses on storytelling with Google Earth, data visualization with Flourish, and really cool things like Google Earth's time lapse, which let me just show you a little example, in fact. This is the kind of thing you'll find there. Lots of amazing animations and stuff, and you can even work out how to develop something like that yourself. But for today, we're going to begin. Look at this window. Does this look a little bit like how you search? You're sure a document or page is out there, but you can't wade through the entire internet to get to it. We're going to really look at how you can bypass searches like this with syntax. But first, I'd really like to help you understand search a little better. Now, you might be familiar with these. These are called knowledge panels. They're the information boxes that appear on Google when you search for an entity, such as people, places, organizations, things that are in the Google knowledge graph. These knowledge graphs draw from a database used by Google and its services to enhance its search engine's results, with information gathered from a variety of sources. They're meant to help you get a quick snapshot of reliable information on a topic based upon Google's available understanding of what's available on the web. Knowledge panels are automatically generated, and information in those knowledge panels comes from various sources around the web. And it's important knowing what these are and what they aren't. Some of the information displayed on knowledge panels may also actually come from verified entities who've suggested edits to facts on their own knowledge panels. Images that appear in the knowledge panel can come from several sources, including people who claim their knowledge panels, but they're actually a very good way to have a quick image search around a topic. And other images are in fact a preview of Google image results for the entity. And often, most text profiles will be drawn from Wikipedia. Well, what are they good for? For you, they're a trustworthy, quick reference guide. You can see here, a search for a general term will bring up a topic page, much like a Wikipedia page. This search also lets you see search terms associated with the one you used, which is really useful for seeing what others might be searching for around the topic. And sometimes, as a general Google search is useful for just getting a general view of a topic, or even seeing what people have searched for, as you can see there with that result. But when you want to retrieve every web page featuring a certain phrase on one website, but only as PDFs, what do you do? That's what we're going to be exploring today. We're going to look at how you can use what we're going to call search operators to very closely find exactly what you want. But before we all do that, this is a tool that is definitely well worth finding. So I put the address up on screen, and that's the address for the Google Advanced Search page. I put it up because sometimes it really does seem as if it requires an advanced search to find it, but it's well worth keeping bookmarked. I'm just going to talk you through all of the pages on all the fields on the page, So from the top, the advanced search page will find you a word or a string of them using these search fields. You can omit words, which is very handy if you're searching for words which have synonyms. And, oops, I just think I've jumped ahead of myself. You can choose to search for a sequence of numbers, for instance, which can be, again, very handy if you're trying to look for a set of results within a set time frame. And you can also filter your results to a certain region or language or to when last it was updated. And here, you can limit your search to a single URL or a domain. And this dropdown allows you to specify whether you want to look in the title, the text, the URL, or even links on the page. You can only search, you can search also for a certain file type and even look for content to license. Now, we're actually going to learn how to use some search operators, but if you are happy to simply bookmark Google's advanced search page and stick to that, that's a perfectly good way to go. Sometimes, if you're a little bit intimidated by search strings, this is a pretty good way to start and just keep practicing your searches. You can search with confidence using the advanced search page. So, before we do that, time for some search engine basics. Every search engine uses Boolean operators in a slightly different ways that may or may not require the operator be typed in capitals or have special punctuation. We're going to focus mostly on Google search operators today to keep things simple, but be aware that different search engines have different qualities and specialities. Google, Bing, and many major commercial search engines will collect your data to personalize your search. This has some benefits in speeding up your search results in some areas, but it has some obvious flaws for journalists. Here's a few alternatives you might like to keep in mind. Yandex was created before Google, believe it or not. And let me just put that address up on screen for Yandex. It is used by more than half of Russia's 110 million internet users. It's very useful for searching for profile images for social media. And as you can see there, that's the address. Give it a try. Next up is Bing, which, oops, let me just go back. Sorry, yes, there it is. Next up is Bing, which is Microsoft's search engine. I'll just quickly put up its address, which is used by about 2.5% of search users. It works on a combination of indexing and human moderation. Like Google, Bing tracks your browsing. This is DuckDuckGo. It's a very useful search engine that allows you to browse the web completely anonymously. You won't find repeats of ads for stuff you've bought or thought about buying because it doesn't store your search history or your IP address. It has its own syntax language called bangs, which we won't go into in detail here, but I'll share with you along the way. Just quickly put up that DuckDuckGo banner. And then there is a whole universe of custom search engines. Now, custom search engines will target special interest areas. This is an example. Look, I'll show you the address, but it's an example I found which targets special interest areas. In this case, the textile industry. So you can, in fact, find search engines that are, in fact, trained just on a very specific set of data, and sometimes that can be very useful. And how do you find those? Well, just on that note, I thoroughly recommend that you follow this woman. Her name is Stephanie Proto. Just pop her Twitter handle up on screen. Now, she enjoys nothing more than finding and tweeting specialty search engines and also expert Google operator tricks. And I can't recommend her enough. She's absolutely brilliant. Twitter can be a very useful way to find and share information about Google searching. And certainly Stephanie Proto's Twitter feed is a great place to start. So let's get started with some operators. As I said before, think of these as Boolean syntax for Google. It's important to start with some baseline ideas about how Google search works. A Google search returns only pages that match all your search terms. The and is implicit in your search as far as Google is concerned. So let me just repeat that. If you put a series of words into a search window, Google will assume that you're looking for all of them. It places its own and in there, and therefore it's implicit. Now, we're actually going to include the and for our more complicated search strings as a guarantee of ensuring certain words. Sometimes Google returns a result which seems to have nothing to do with your search terms. Well, this is because Google has found your term on a previous version of that website. You can view that result by looking at the cached version of that particular search result. Here's how to do that. I'll just quickly show you. If you have a look at my screen right now, and I go down to this little arrow here, I can check for a cached result for a particular search. That's just another handy way that Google allows you to be able to view a search that may well have disappeared off the web because it's been removed. To view a result, I'm sorry. So, as I say, we're going to include the and for our more complicated search strings. And we're going to now look at something that's going to also help your searches, which is the use of inverted commas. Inverted commas are incredibly important because they give you an exact match to a phrase that you're looking for. You can try it out with the example that you can see on screen there. One other tip you can try is put your own name into a set of inverted commas and see what that brings up for you. Otherwise, take them out and see if that changes the result. Now, here are some more, and these are really important. And, which we've talked about a bit before, can be also written as the plus symbol. And that will ensure that a term that will be included along with another in your search. This will come in handy later on when we do more detailed searches. But in a general Google search, as I've said a few times, the and is implicit and unnecessary. Not, however, which is also written as a minus symbol, will do the opposite. It'll keep a word out of your results. To save yourself some keystrokes, just use the minus symbol. Or will include both search terms that you've used. So here's a little example. Well, I just make sure that you've... so there's and, always remember that, not, and finally or. So here's some examples. Now we've got an example of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Now let's have a look at what sort of result that produces. As you can see here, this one will bring up both of them, including knowledge panels, videos, that sort of stuff. And if I try the or result, surprisingly, it's actually very similar. Although, again, it seems to have brought quite a few more results where the two are mentioned. What if we try minus Bill Gates? So right now on screen, we have Steve Jobs minus Bill Gates. And now, as you can see, we've only got stories about Steve Jobs. Okay, so let me remind you, inverted commas will get you an exact match. A plus will include the term, a minus will exclude it, and an or will include both. So keep those in mind. We're going to move on. So just to recap, here's another example. Let's have a look at the results we get with these. So first, here is Notre Dame or fire. And now, let's have a look when we have and. And finally, this one mentions nothing about the cathedral and the fire, and instead talks about a university of the same name. There's a really simple little example which you can try to basically test out. So, just moving on. Now I'm going to introduce another very important operator. This is the cite operator. Let me just tell you why. Now, cite is incredibly useful because it will narrow your search down to a top-level domain. A top-level domain can be something like .au or .com.au or even .gov.au or any of those parts of a uniform resource locator. It can even be used to narrow a search down to a specific page or URL. I'll show you that a little later on. So to recap, we now have inverted commas, and, or, not, and the cite operator to help focus our searches. Have your browsers ready, because now we're going to put these together. So let's look into some examples. With these ones, we've actually added topic at the head of the search. Now, the reason why we've done that is because, as we've seen before, topic searches can be very important in Google terms. So by adding a topic right to the top, at the top of our searches, we can actually start to look for more content specific to these websites. And I'm going to talk you through each of these examples. To start with, we have a good use of a minus here. You can see here we're looking for results which don't feature an animal or cat, and I'll quickly show you these as well. So as you can see now on my screen, we've got examples for Lego toys, cars, that sort of stuff. And in this next example, we're looking at a commonly used phrase, China economic growth, on the ANU's website. As you can see here, we've got all sorts of results, and all of them feature the anu.edu.au URL in their result. And again, you can see the use of China, economic growth, not necessarily coming up as a phrase, but those three words turning up in results. And here's another topic search on the .gov.au domain. I'll just quickly show you what sort of result that brings up. As you can see here, again, all .gov.au URLs and all featuring the term JobKeeper. Are you getting a handle on some of this right now? Remember, things like the site operator will in fact train your search only on one website or only on a domain. So say, for instance, if you decided you wanted to look for documents across a bunch of Australian government websites for the federal government, you might just use the site.gov.au operator like we have on screen there. So related is a very useful way to find websites of a similar category or genre. So here's an example, okay? In this case, I've used related with the Deliveroo URL, which has brought up results of similar URLs or similar services. And in my second example, I've used only the business name. And it seems to be bringing up, again, very specific results for the business, but with some other results which seem to be discussing it. Now, file type is another extremely important operator, particularly as many many documents sit on government websites like PDFs or Excels or Excel spreadsheets. Have a look at the difference between these results when I add a file type XLS. I'll show you the beginning. So you can see here we have news stories and stuff like that. And here, suddenly it's quite specific. We have the mention of the word unemployment come up in URLs which end in .gov.au. Cache is another incredibly useful tool. And we're going to return to cache searching in some depth, but here's a quick example. This is a cached version of the WHO's, or the World Health Organization's website. And again, there are all sorts of applications for cache searching. Sometimes for results that have been cached, you can use that. But in this case, we're actually looking simply to see what the last stored version of WHO's website is. As I say, we'll return to cache searching in some depth a little later on. So once again, another recap. Site, inverted commas, and, or, and not. Are you clear about what they do? Do you need more examples? Maybe I'll show you a few. So let's introduce some more search operators and get richer results for our searches. Try these examples yourself. I'm going to introduce you to the in-title, in-URL, and in-text commands. So for instance, in-title, to start with, will actually restrict your search to words that are only in the title of documents or pages. In URL, will search for the terms you use in the URL of the web page. And just on that point, you might be wondering why many web pages have terms in the URLs. It's what's known as a RESTful or a clean or a semantic URL. These were designed to essentially make the web more usable and accessible. It also is a benefit to us because we can actually use these to search the internet. In-text is another very handy one, which can also be used to look for text in documents and PDFs. And finally, the around command is a particularly interesting one. Say if you're searching a document, perhaps a history of John Howard on a particular page, and you want to see whether another Prime Minister, Harold Holt, was a particular prominence. And you could simply just put a sequence of numbers in that little set of brackets there to see how many, how far away from the mention of John Howard's name was Harold Holt's. Give those a try, by the way. Now, we're going to start to look at some string operators and do a little bit of experimenting. And again, it's a good opportunity for me to do a little bit of a progress check. Have a really good look at that search string on screen. Do you understand what it's looking for? If you do, excellent. You're doing really well. If you don't worry. And maybe syntax isn't your thing. Again, as I said, you could reproduce that whole thing in the Google Advanced Search page. However, I'm going to talk you through it. To begin with, you have in URL. Let me just open up a browser, and I might just put this together live. So we start with in URL lists. And as you can see, it's already brought up some lists. But what I'm going to do is refine my search. Now, I'm going to now narrow my search to only the Twitter website. So right now my string says in URL, and as we know, that is looking for the word lists in a URL. Now, which URL? Well, let's answer that question by putting in site:twitter.com. And let's hit enter and see what happens. So what it's done now is it has brought up the mention of the word lists anywhere it can find it in a URL on Twitter. But that's not quite what we're looking for, is it? Now we're looking for an exact match phrase. So I'm going to throw our phrase in. Here it is. Coronavirus experts. Now, I'm going to show you an alternative to this in a little while, but for now, let's talk our way through that. We're looking for lists in a URL, but only on the twitter.com website, and only featuring the exact phrase coronavirus experts. When I hit enter, have a look at that. There's a result featuring only lists on Twitter. Let's see what result we got, for instance, if we change that text. So let's just say I want to put in the words Indigenous Australia. And again, you can see here, what it's actually done is not only is it digging up lists, but it's actually also bringing me back results, which are mentioning Indigenous Australia in more than just the URL, it seems. But again, very handy because it's actually phrase matching on the Twitter URL using the site operator. Are you comfortable with that? I'm going to show you a few more now. So I'm going to build a search syntax to look for documents on the AFP website. So let's see if you can guess what I'm about to do. So first things first, I'm going to throw in a site operator linking only to afp.gov.au. Now, here's something that I'm really glad came up. If you do a lot of complicated Google searching, you will often come up with captcha fields because you are, in fact, searching like a bot. So be prepared to put up with this and consider it a badge of honor, especially for me, because I really just can't seem to escape these some days. And I think we should be good. Oh, hooray, Google doesn't think I'm a bot. That's fantastic. But anyway, as I say, back to our search. As you can see now, I've brought up examples only from the AFP. Now, what if I decided that I wanted to add a couple of more little bits to my string? Well, first things first, I'm going to add this file type .pdf or file type :PDF. I'm going to share that one with you on screen as well because it is particularly useful. Let me just see. So that is the one I'm using right now on the screen. Now, so I want to look for an exact match. So let's just say I want to see if text comes up on any pages as a PDF. And as you can see, it does. So just to be absolutely clear, I'll just make sure I share with you exactly the text I just used. Give that a try and see how that works for you. So, but I'm going to try a few others as well. Here is an interesting one. You may be aware of a website that looks at, that records FOI outcomes. Well, here's a bit of syntax, and I'll just share that with you. That one will find you mentions of home affairs in the title. And again, it's trained on an FOI recording website called Right to Know. Just something a little topical, but kind of relevant for today. I've decided I wanted to have a look and see what I can find about slavery in Australia. I decided I'd give Slavery Australia a try, but in particular, I wanted to include the term history, and I definitely wanted to see what university or educational websites were teaching people about slavery, and I can tell you it's quite a lot. So here's the syntax I've used for that one. And as you can see, the result it's bringing me is everything mentions of, and look right up the top, Australia's hidden history of slavery, and so on and so forth. And that's a document that actually goes back to 2017. But most relevant results are coming up. But again, you could narrow that one down, for instance, if you were, say, for instance, looking to see what Sydney University had done, you would simply add their address to the URL. Or for instance, maybe University of Western Australia, etc. And as you can see, so on, it's changing the results. Now, let me do a little exercise that is a bit of a diversion, and it's a bit of fun, but hopefully this teaches you all about how these work, kind of like recipes, okay? So, first things first, I am a huge fan of the New York Times cooking website and of cooking in general. So, let's see if you could guess this one. I'm going to flash this banner up on your screen now, and I'm also going to use that in on my screen window, so you can play along with me too. So if I pop that into the search window, you can see here I've got lots of results. Looks like I've jumped the gun and actually included an ingredient. How silly of me. I'm going to go backwards. You can see here I've got a result for all sorts of chicken recipes. Now, this is a challenge that you can actually try at home. What if you looked in your fridge and all you could see was a chicken and chili? Now, I'm going to use the US spelling because I know that the New York Times will use that. And if I hit enter, you can see lots of results for chicken and chili. However, I know some of you are a bit finicky about these things, so I'm going to do this. How about if I use a minus to subtract any mention of coriander in the text? And then you can see it'll revise our results, and we now have recipes which don't have coriander in them whatsoever. Give those a try at home. It's a kind of a fun example, but it's a useful way to play around with these search strings to get results. I hope that if you're a bit intimidated by the serious stuff, maybe doing a quick recipe search on your favorite recipe website is a really good way just to practice. And it's a kind of a fun challenge. Look in the fridge, throw those things into your search terms, and you never know what you'll find. But I'm going to move on. Now, I'm going to set up a search string on screen, and I'll talk you through it, just to see whether, to have a look at something that's a little bit more like what we might do every day in news. So I decided I wanted to have a look at a website called the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission. This is their website in New South Wales. They keep an oversight over police. The page I was specifically interested in is this one, which is their news and publications page. So here's how I would get working. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to specifically look at whether they've got anything about the strip searching that's been going on in New South Wales. So I'm going to start with some syntax. I'll quickly share that in the window. So here's some syntax which is designed to limit my search to just that particular website. Okay, so I'll just pop that into my Google search window. And as you can see now, it's bringing me up a list of all of those news pages. But I'm going to refine it somewhat because I'm going to add this to it. Now, if you look on my screen, you can see the term in-text and strip search is in there. I'm hoping that it will capture that as a phrase, but if the two terms appear on different parts of the page, that's good too. So if I hit enter, now you can see that the results I've got are much more targeted on strip searching. And these include media releases about the Law Enforcement Conduct Commission's inquiry and review of strip searching procedure in New South Wales. Very interesting stuff. Now, hopefully you are starting to get a handle on what this can do. Now I'm going to show you a few examples that look at social media. We're going to return to that Twitter list tool, but for the time being, I want to have a look at whether you can use this to look at content on Facebook. So I'm going to look specifically at the content of public groups. Okay, and this is what I'm going to use. So if you have a look, I'm going to try this. Okay, so talk yourself through that piece of syntax. It's trained on Facebook, obviously. It looks like it is also including groups in URLs, and it's looking for the term gardening in the title. And as you can see, it's bringing up results which are all sorts of public groups, and bear in mind it'll look for public groups which have gardening in the title. Can be quite useful as well, and look, for what it's worth, in the last few months I know there have been a lot of groups formed around COVID, and also in this case it's worth always using the OR operator and including coronavirus and so on. And of course, let's just say if you're aware of other terms that people are using, whether it's code or whether you think that, is there a group that's calling it the Chinese virus? Well, you can throw that in as well into your in-text search and retrieve groups that are doing that. So I just want to quickly stay on my gardening theme though. What if I was specifically interested in a group that were enthusiasts for Australian gardening, specifically Australian native plants? Well, this is what I'm going to try. So as you can see here, mentions of native plants coming up a lot more frequently, and it's narrowed my search. Are you finding this useful? Hopefully you are. Now, let's have a look at Instagram. And again, you'll see that the site operator comes up very, very frequently. You might be aware that if you look at Instagram URLs, particularly for high-profile people and celebrities, their name will almost always appear in the URL. So that's where I'm going to start. So say, for instance, if you have a look at this one, this piece of syntax is actually using an asterisk, very importantly, as a so-called wildcard operator. Now, the handy thing with an asterisk is that it will open up your search and allow you to not necessarily have to accommodate every single person in this case, and I'll show you the example I'm going to use. In my example, it's using Miguel as a starting point, and it's finding me every single Instagram profile which has Miguel in the title. It can be even used to look for Instagram profiles that just happen to have a phone number in them. So I'm just going to use the international code for the New South Wales number. In fact, I should really share that with you. And if you look at that, that is actually bringing up instances where the phone number is coming up in somebody's Instagram profile. And that's for local phone numbers there. Now, also, one last one. If you happen to be looking for Instagram pages maybe that have sprung up around COVID-19, you can see here, in this case, it's also pulling up Instagram's own pages from their own blog looking at COVID-19. So I want to go back to our Twitter list search content. Now, I'm going to show you an alternative to the syntax I showed you a little earlier on, which was this one. Now, in the case of the one that you're looking at on the screen, we decided to target our search at the term lists in URL, and obviously training it on Twitter, but then in turn, as well, using inverted commas to look for a match phrase. So I'm going to show you something that also works. So I'm just going to pop this up on your screen. So you can see there, this is a slightly different one. If you have a look at that, what you can see there is that it's trained on the Twitter URL, and it's using the wildcard operator to say, I don't care whose Twitter account it comes from, just get me lists. And then finally, that list name, well, that's a space for you to substitute your own list name. So let me give you an example. I'm just going to pop that into a window, and because I absolutely love space, I'm going to use just the term space. Now you can see here, there's a difference here. The other Twitter syntax was really good at helping you find a phrase that might be appearing in someone's list or perhaps in their list description. In this case, we're only looking for individual terms like space to appear. And of course, once again, treat this as a badge of honor that Twitter thinks you're a bot. And finally, you can see here, I've got a whole bunch of results for people that have the term space in their Twitter list title. Okay, so this syntax can also be used to mine social media platforms like Reddit. Now, as if you do or don't know, Reddit's groups are called subreddits. And if you're particularly wanting to search just the topics, try this. So have a look at my screen. I'm just going to pop site Reddit :r, and I'm going to throw that into this space underneath me so you can see what I'm using. There you go. So that's the syntax I'm using, which is actually returning a whole series of subreddits. So now, as you can see here, subreddits basically usually carry what they're called in the title after the R. So let's go back. And if I go right back to my subreddit, if I use the in title command, for instance, I'm just going to, and perhaps let's say throw in a word like, now I'm bringing up every single subreddit that has defamation in the title. But what if I particularly want to search a subreddit I found, or say, for instance, if I actually know that a subreddit has a certain name, or if, for instance, this, you can see here I brought up a combination of Oz law and there seems to be an Oz legal. So what I'm going to do now is change my syntax because I just want to look at that Oz law URL. Now, let's just say I want to see if they ever discuss defamation. Now you can only see mentions from the Oslo forum, and I better share that one with you, that are mentioning defamation. Let me just quickly share that. So give that one a try next time. Oops, not that one. You can give that one a try next time you want to have a search through Reddit. And sometimes that can be useful because Reddit can be a very complex and very dense social media website, but it is possible to actually zero in on discussions on Reddit. Now, just quickly, I want to show you a piece of syntax that will allow you to bypass job ads and directory listings on LinkedIn. This one's a bit complicated, and so I'm going to open up a window and I'm going to show it to you first, talk you through it, and let me just pop this in here. So from the top, it's site.linkedin.com. These brackets are asking it to look for in or pub in the URL, but not all of these things. In other words, it's saying, don't give me directory listings, don't give me job listings. So if I hit enter on that, you can see now that it's bringing up LinkedIn profiles. Well, we need better than that. So what if I decided I wanted to look for people who work in the Department of Premier and Cabinet? What I would do is I would start with my syntax, like so, and then I would add the title of the department I was looking for. So if I pop that into the window and hit enter, now you can see that all of my results are people who work in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. Pretty cool, eh? Hopefully this is useful to you, and hopefully you are getting a few ideas about how you might be able to apply this to some of your reporting jobs. Now, let's quickly return to cache searching, because caching is really important. Google takes a snapshot of each web page as a backup in case the current page isn't available. These pages then become part of Google's cache. If you click a link that says cached, you'll see the version of the website that Google stored. Now, cache searching is another area where you can do important research. Governments and private corporations are always hitting the delete button on content they own, on their own websites, But thanks to the power of caching, essentially backing these files up, information that is deleted isn't always lost. And we're going to use the Wayback Machine to find cached pages for the World Health Organization. So as you can see here, in this example on the screen, here's an example of how far back the ABC's website's been cached. And as you can see there, this is going back to an example way back in 1997, which is kind of cool. But quickly, I just want to show you an example here, just a live example of the what happens if, for instance, you run a website today through that. So let's just have a look at the cached version of the World Health Organization's website. And I'll start that. Yeah. So as you can see here, I brought up the World Health Organization's website. I'm just going to quickly grab that URL and go to all. And in this case, if I pop that URL in, and if you wait not too long, it opens up a clickable, browsable digest of every single snapshot of the World Health Organization's website going back a very long way. Cache searching is incredibly useful. And have a look at that. That's the WHO's website back in 1998. So, I also want to show you another little example. This is a website called archive.is. It's an incredibly useful archive website. It has the added fantastic feature of archiving social media. Really, really cool, and I should definitely share that URL with you. Now, archive.is has the additional feature of being able to archive social media. So if you have a look at an example like this, you can see here, this is an example of what it looks like. You get a screenshot and you actually get a cached web page. Very handy. Sadly, that tweet is actually still up. Now, we are getting close to the end of today's session. I really hope it's been useful, but I just want to show you a couple of really handy ways that you can use your new syntax powers to help your reporting. Now, this is an example of a Google Alerts page, which is actually using some fairly complicated syntax. It's using internal use only, in inverted commas, or confidential, and it's limiting itself to the .gov.au website with a search restricted to only file types. And as you can see here, it's bringing up some pretty interesting results. Again, this can be handy for something that, if you know what you're looking for. But let me quickly see if I can construct a search here that might show you how this works. So if I open up the Google Alerts page, across. So here's my alerts page. Well, what I want to do is I'm interested in product safety recalls. Okay, so I'm going to start with a bit of syntax and pop it into my window. Well, this is the starting bit. I'm limiting myself to the productsafety.gov.au website. Okay, now I'm particularly interested in products that have been recalled which have the risk of fire or explosion. So here's my text which I'm going to use. Sorry, here's my syntax which I'm going to use, which is the in-text command and colon, and then simply risk, fire, and explosion. I'm not looking for an exact match. I'm kind of hoping that it basically will find those three terms right across a series of documents. Well, and if I hit enter, as you can see here, I've actually already got a preview. The cool thing about Google Alerts is that as you put your syntax in live, it will recalibrate and you'll actually bring up any available content that's actually already there on that website. Very, very handy. Once you're done, you simply hit create alert, and there it is. And if I go into edit mode here, I'm going to ask it to send me a digest as soon as that phrase will occur. And so that way, I should get an email, I will get an email, I'm sorry, every single time a story or a piece of content comes up on that website, which corresponds to my search. It's pretty cool. Just while we're on the subject as well of monitoring for events, here's a little tool I think I might finish up with. Hopefully this also helps with some of your searching. This is a thing called Visual Ping. Now, Visual Ping is kind of like Google Alerts, but it works visually. What it'll do is you simply go to the Visual Ping URL, and in fact, let me share that one with you. And that will then monitor a website, and it will actually look for a visual change. So if you have a look at this, it will, and it can actually also work on mobile, it will detect a visual change and it will send you a message about that. Now, so look, let's just do a teeny bit of recapping. Oh, and in fact, while I still have the time, I definitely want to mention that you should have a look at dataset search. Again, your syntax will work in Windows in dataset. So think in terms of, what terms you want included in the dataset, and dataset is very good at retrieving them. Public data directory also works in a similar way. Here is an example of flu trends, which which it has produced data for. And again, you can use Google search syntax in that as well. And also, don't forget, with Scholar, you also have the added advantage of being able to actually set up alerts for yourself. But again, you can use your search syntax in that. So, just quickly, let me go back and do a little bit of recapping. Right. So don't forget your most important operators, your site, sorry, let me just pull these up. So don't forget and or not, and your other search operators in title. Here we go. So your inverted commas, don't forget your plus and your minus symbol, and also your or operator. Try these out at home, and most importantly of all, your site operator. It will train you on a particular URL or page, and it will be absolutely your most useful one for narrowing down your search and eliminating a lot of noise. Minuses, pluses, and also your in titles and things like that. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at newslabsupport@google.com. You can also email me at that address there if you have any other questions. And don't forget g.co/newstraining for absolutely more. And look, I have to say thank you very, very much. It's been absolutely fantastic spending this time with you. And I certainly hope you've learned something from all of this. So thank you. And I will say goodbye. See everybody later. Have a good time. Bye-bye. Enjoy your weekend.